While the second half of Jesmond Ward's novel Salvage, the Bones is about the approach of Hurricane Katrina, it's also, of course, Esch's story. Esch, who identifies with her dead mother, with the storm itself, as well as with Skeeta's dog, China, and with the Greek mythic character Medea, a woman who, through her tenaciousness, is willing to commit violence against her brother mythically and against her own children, and as her husband leaves her. And this sense of tenaciousness it increases as Esch's story is told in the second half of the novel, a point where she looks at Manny, the father of her child, and sees him as his goldenness and says, "I hate him." Esch's kind of identification with Medea works its way out in various ways mythically in the story. There's this interesting moment around page 136 and following where they bring Daddy home after his fingers have been cut off in preparation for the hurricane, and it's almost kind of like she's in between worlds here. She's looking at a photograph of her mother on the dresser, and she says, "From the dresser, Mama beams at me." And it's kind of like Esch at this moment is caught between the worlds of the living and the dead. She's inhabiting this kind of mythic space where she has the power to see through things, and is going to go on in the world with that kind of seeing. Shortly thereafter, at the basketball game, she and Manny are together, and she shows this tenaciousness in their sexual act. This is on page 144. The bathroom is darker even than the gym, and it is small with only one sink and two dark green stalls. Continuing on to 145, about a third of the way down. "This is the girls," I say weakly. "Been thinking about you," says Manny, and then he has pushed me back into the stall, closed it behind us, grabbed my arms and turned so that he is sitting on the toilet. He unzips his pants and I grab his dick hard enough to hurt. I want it to hurt. He doesn't wince. Intent on my loose shorts, he pulls me down on him so I am straddling him, and then he is inside. Continuing down a ways. "Wait," he says, and then he is making me stand up, pulling off my shorts and underwear, bearing me back down on him. My clothes catch on one ankle, hang like they're half pinned from a clothesline. We have never done it like this. His hands are on my ass, and he tries to look down to see, but it brings us face to face. Sweat gathers at his hairline, catches on the red grooves left by the clippers like ant trails across the top of his forehead. He grimaces, looking down, away, over my shoulder, up to the ceiling. I grab his face. Under my hands, his jaw, freshly shaved, feels like a cat's tongue. My fingers are black as bark against his paler skin. He will look at me. He shrugs, twists his head to the side. Flipping like a caught fish, I roll my hips. It is too sweet. He will look at me. He snorts, puts his head down into my shoulder. I pull hard and my hands slide along his face. I grab again. He will look at me. That tenaciousness that's shown in Esch's behavior and forcing Manny to view her is akin to Medea's tenaciousness in holding on to her man Jason. Against that, you have the end of the scene where Manny leaves. And you have this moment at the end, near the end of page 146, right, where she wipes herself after sex, and then flushes the toilet, and says watches the water spin in a spiral, a baby storm, as it sucks Mama's hair clip down and down away. Oddly, right, the sense of the toilet's flush, which looks like the hurricane's rotation, as she contemplates Manny's leaving here. And later in that scene, she will quote, wonder what will come from him and me as she thinks about this child. It's in this moment where she starts to kind of develop a maternal impulse. On page 199, she describes the moment how her mama used to teach her to look for eggs in the yard that the chickens had hidden. near the top of 199. Mama taught us to find eggs. Look but don't look, she said. They'll find you. You got to wander and they'll come. She leaned over like Randall, her strong hand soft on the back of my neck, steadying me like a dog. They're usually brown and have some feathers stuck to them, she'd say, pointing. The eggs look that way because of the mama. Whatever color the mama is, that's what color the egg is. Her lips were pink. When she leaned over like that, I could smell baby powder drifting from the front of her dress, see the mole-marked skin of her chest and soft fall of her breast down into her bra. Like me and you, she said. Like me and you. See? This is kind of awakening maternal impulse as Esch, comes to terms with, losing Manny to his girlfriend, of him, and the other guys using her. And so, she fights between that maternal impulse and moments where she starts to identify with the storm and its rage. She'll say on page 199 or 198, I imagine it as the wind that Medea called up as she feels the first kind of squalls of the storm. And she reflects just a few pages later in 205 that tomorrow everything will be washed clean, and she kind of glories in that sense of destruction that's coming. This is brought on by another encounter with Manny where she tells him that the child is his. This is on 202. Just past the middle. There he is there, receding under the trees, a setting sun. I jump the ditch to the road. Wait, I call. My voice is higher than I have ever heard it. Manny stops, turning, and his face is a magnolia flower tossing in the wind, his eyes the bright yellow heart. Now I see it, now I don't. What? He says when I catch up to him. Randall wanted something. Manny's eyes slide past me to the ditch, to the road, up to the sky, the color of a scoured pan. No, I say, me. I gotta go. He turns, shows me the back of his head, his hair, his shoulders. Now I see it, now I don't. I'm pregnant. He stops in profile. His nose is like a knife, and his hair grows so fast it's already starting to curl. Sweat beads at his hairline. It's yours. What? Yours. Manny shakes his head. The knife cuts. Sweat rolls down his scars, flung out onto the rotten asphalt. I ain't got nothing here, he says. Manny blinks at me when he says it, looks at me head on for the second time ever. Nothing. Nothing. For some reason I see Skeeter when I blink. Skeeter kneeling next to China, always kneeling, always stroking and loving and knowing her. Skeeter's face when he stood across from Rico when he told China, make them know. I am on him like China. And she draws blood from Manny in this encounter as she confronts and attacks him. So she takes on Medea's righteous anger in the end. And the question is, will she follow that righteous anger, or will she feel more of the maternal impulse, which kind of turns in this section of the book, right? It's at this point where Randall finds her in the ditch. She sits there, and she starts to feel that sense of working between strength and weakness. She thinks about her own mother, in another storm, Elaine, and wondering whether she will keep this child safe and she will protect the child that she, has developing in her. She also starts to feel that sense of maternal connection to the other guys and her brothers. After China's death, she hugs a grieving Skeet and says, "My arms had never been so strong," and feels like that strong maternal drive and energy. And she also comes to terms near that point in the midst of the storm with naming the child. She'll name it after her mother, Rose. If it's a girl, and if it's a boy, she'll name it Jason after Skeeta himself. She speaks to Big Henry on pages 254 and 255, and when he asks who the daddy is, she says, "It don't have a daddy. It's got several daddies," she says. And you can feel like a sense of how she's going to connect with the guys as she raises the child. And it's in this sense that Esch kind of becomes a sense of a resolved Medea, perhaps, that she identifies with Katrina, she identifies with China, she identifies with her own mother, and comes to terms with her own identity as a mother within the story. And this leads to the novel's conclusion when she kind of thinks back on the death of China. This is in the last couple paragraphs, about a third of the way down the page. Randall will watch Junior, and Big Henry will watch me, and I will watch Skeeta, and Skeeta will watch none of us. He will watch the dark, the ruined houses, the muddy appliances, the tops of the trees that surround us, whose leaves are dying for lack of roots. He will feed the fire so it will blaze bright as a lighthouse. He will listen for the beat of her tail, the patting of her feet in mud. He will look into the future and see her emerge into the circle of fire, his fire, beaten dirty by the hurricane so she doesn't gleam anymore, so she is the color of his teeth, of the white of his eyes, of the bone bounded by his blood, dull but alive, alive, alive. And when he sees her, his face will break and run water, and it will wear away like water does, the heart of stone left by her leaving. China, she will return, standing tall and straight, the milk burned out of her. She will look down on the circle of light we have made in the pit, and she will know that I have kept watch, that I have fought. China will bark and call me sister. In the star-suffocated sky, there is a great waiting silence. She will know that I am a mother. And it is, resolved sense of Medea. She connects back to China's story that Esch comes to in her journey in Ward's novel.